Well, good afternoon again, good evening, depending on where you are based. This is our 5th webinar on international human rights monitoring mechanisms. For those of you who have participated in our previous webinars, this will be a repetition for you, sorry. But for the first timers, let me introduce myself, Etkiniz, and our guests for today's webinar. My name is Adem Arkadaş-Thibert'in. I'm Human Rights Monitoring and Advocacy Key Expert of Etkiniz EU program. It's a relatively new and innovative EU support program for civil society organizations in Turkey. It provides support for civil society organizations for monitoring compliance of Turkey's compliance with the international human rights framework, mainly the United Nations, the Council of Europe, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe as well. Etkiniz program strives to help civil society organizations in Turkey to increase their access and influence to European and international human rights frameworks and mechanisms. We are here today as a team. Our communications experts are here, Pınar and Fırat. Our interpreters are here, Işıl and Şule, and our sign language interpreter, Pelin, is here as well. We also have our program manager, Frida Wünschmann'n. That's very difficult for me to pronounce. Friederike Wünschmann'n. Hope I'm not messing it up too much. From our EU delegation in Ankara. She's going to share a few words about the EU and its commitment to human rights, civil society, and democracy, and our subject on children's rights and children's participation and the EU. Today and throughout 2021, we are going to talk a lot about reporting the state of children in Turkey to the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, because Turkish authorities are going to get engaged in a constructive dialogue with the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, starting from the end of 2021 and early 2022. And CSOs are preparing to engage in this process by submitting reports to the committee until the 1st of November 2021. And children are also free to submit their own reports. So that's why actually we are here today. But before introducing Emma and today's topic, I would like to give the floor to Frida. Frida, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Adem. As Adem said, my name is Friederike Wünschmann'n. For my Turkish friends, I'm always joking. I said, you can also call me Feride. It's much easier. And I have the pleasure of being the program manager for this Etkiniz program. As I would like to leave sufficient time for the experts, for Emma, I would like to just give you a very brief introduction why this topic of children participation is important for the European Union. EU policies in the area of children's rights emphasizes that all EU countries must respect, protect, and promote children's rights. Equally, it's important that EU policies that have an impact on children, such as environment or transport, must be designed in line with the best interest of the child. I'm very proud to tell you that very recently in March, the European Commission could put forward a comprehensive EU strategy on the rights of the child to better protect all children, to help them fulfill their rights, and to place them right at the center of EU policymaking. For me, very important, and this is also very important for today's session, is that more than 10,000 children were consulted during the drafting process of that strategy. Let me underline the importance of children participation. Whatever we do for children, we need to do it with children. Regardless of their age, children and young people are valid citizens who can contribute to improving the quality of all citizens. Therefore, it's in our common interest to promote, listen, and take into account children's voices and their contributions. However, a recent study shows that only 1 out of 4 children in Europe consider that their rights are respected by the whole society. So what does the EU do in this respect in Turkey? For many years, the EU delegation the institution I'm working for, has been supporting civil society organizations and activists in Turkey working on children's rights, as well as public authorities in international organizations such as UNICEF or ILO. One project, for example, focused on the fulfillment of children's rights through building capacity for existing child right networks so that they become a distinct movement and a united voice of, for, and with children. Another very important action actually implemented by the organization Adem used to work for, the International Children's Center. This action contributed to the prevention of child trafficking for sexual purposes in the tourism and travel industry in Turkey, with targeted awareness raising and training activities for adults working in these sectors. Another EU flagship program to support civil society in Turkey, Sivil, provides in-kind support to those civil society organizations and activists in Turkey working with a right-based approach. And children's rights ranks among the top 3 working fields. Whatever the EU has been doing for children's rights, the voice of children has always been very important. Children have been participating in national forums and roundtables, discussing with adults on issues such as climate change or urban mobility, topics which are important for children, maybe even more than for adults, as children are the future. Let me stop here. Thanks a lot for your attention, and I wish you all a very interesting webinar.
Thank you, Frida, for this very meaningful intervention. Indeed, we are happy that the EU is supporting children's participation in Turkey as well. Well, today our guest is Emma Grindulis from Child Rights Connect, the main civil society organization working to assist other civil society organizations' engagement with the Committee on the Rights of the Child. Emma is the Child Rights Connect's focal point for child participation and a program officer for Asia Pacific, Europe, North America regions. And she's going to tell us about child participation and reporting to the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child. Emma has a master's in policy studies at the University of Edinburgh with a focus on childhood studies and children's rights. She first worked with the Scottish Alliance for Children's Rights. Since then, she has devoted her time to progressively working with child rights-based approach through strong non-governmental networks at various levels. And she also worked at Eurochild, that momentarily mentioned by Frida, before joining to the Child Rights Connect. The floor is yours, Emma.
Thanks a lot, Adam. And yeah, it's very, well, it's great to hear the introductory remarks from the EU, and we really value the support that we receive from the EU around children's rights, child participation, and yeah, and they're a great partner of ours in our work at the UN. So yeah, very, very appreciative of those remarks. So I will just share my screen, and then perhaps we can both quickly introduce ourselves. So I'll pass the floor very quickly to my colleague Fanny Chapuis, who's with us today as well.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening. My name is Fanny Chapuis, and I am Serisi reporting and program support here at Child Rights Connect. So basically acting as the focal point for CRC reporting among our organization.
Thanks, Fanny. So a little bit about who we are as Child Rights Connect. I'm just checking this right slide. So you may have joined last week's webinar on CRC reporting, but in case you didn't, then Child Rights Connect is a global network of over 90 child rights organizations. We have an office in Geneva in Switzerland, and members all across the world, from small grassroots NGOs all the way up to international NGOs. And our main vision aspiration is for the full implementation of the Convention on the Rights of the Child and its optional protocols. We act as a bridge, as a connector between civil society and other actors and institutions, agencies on child rights, human rights, more broadly speaking, at national, regional, international level. And we also then act as this bridge between civil society and the UN human rights mechanisms, and empowering, building the capacity and providing technical assistance to civil society, including children, to engage at the UN level and to participate in UN human rights mechanisms, including the Committee on the Rights of the Child, to advocate for child rights and to push for implementation at the grassroots level. So for the agenda today, so as Adem said, the webinar is on child participation and focusing on the CRC reporting. So I'll first go into some just key top principles around child participation, and then look at the CRC reporting cycle, and give some tips on preparing for the empowerment of children to participate in the CRC reporting cycle, what the role of Child Rights Connect is and how we can support you. I'll share some examples of child participation that we think could be relevant and helpful for you. And then I'll briefly mention some of the challenges that we have heard from civil society in order to overcome in supporting children to participate at the UN level. And then I will share some resources with you and then link back to the CRC reporting timeline for Turkey. And as Adam said, we'll have a chance for question and answers at the end. So child participation rights. So what are we talking about? So when we think about reasons or actions around empowering children to participate in CRC reporting, children have a right to participate in any decisions affecting their lives and for these views and opinions to be taken into account. So this is the reason why we should be supporting children to participate in the CRC reporting cycle, because it is their right to do so. As specified as in the slide in Article 12 of the Convention, but then also when we look at Articles 13 to 17 of the Convention, we see also their civil and political rights that are really supporting children to exercise their right to participate. So for example, their right to access information, their right to form or join associations, their right to peaceful assembly, their right to privacy. And so we really see more and more how children that are acting as human rights defenders are really exercising these rights. And it's important for us to see them all as a kind of holistic package and a broad spectrum of rights. I've included a link to the child-friendly convention that we drafted for UNICEF, which can also be used in the process of empowering children to learn about their rights and then to go on to take forward actions in CRC reporting. So child participation in the committee standards. So the committee has very strong and advancing actions and activities to support child participation across their activities. So not just their reporting cycle, but in the drafting of their general comments. For example, the recent general comment on the digital environment, the days of general discussion, for example, the one that's coming up this September on child rights and alternative care. The committee has its own working methods. I've included a link here for the working methods on child participation in CRC reporting, but it's important to mention that they also have working methods on child participation in DGDs, in days of general discussion, and they also have their general comment number 12 on child participation, that really is the key kind of framework for us to refer to when we're thinking about child participation and when we are advancing these activities with children. And so in that general comment number 12, there are 9 basic requirements that are listed. And it's really important that whenever we're thinking about child participation and taking forward these activities, that we use these basic requirements in all of our preparations and planning, in the implementation and in the follow-up to our activities. I won't go through them all in lots of detail because we don't have lots of time, but it's very important to take the time to look at the general comment and to look through these 9 different explanations and different aspects. I'll maybe come back to some of them a little later in the presentation in terms of what we see as priority and what's absolutely crucial that we cannot forget. But all of these basic requirements really set the basis and the standards that we can then be building on. So child participation throughout the CRC reporting process. It's important to stress that child participation isn't just a one-off event in the development of a report or in a meeting with the committee. It should really be seen as a long-term holistic process and as an empowering process for children to learn about their rights and then to learn about different ways that they can move forward to act as human rights defenders and advocate on behalf of theirs or others' human rights. So children can participate as adults in every step of the process. And some examples here can highlight ways that children are already participating in the process. So, for example, and is linked to the working methods on child participation in CRC reporting, state parties actually have an obligation to consult with children in the development of their state party report. It doesn't always happen and it can often be quite ad hoc, but nevertheless, there are quite a few examples and occasions where children have been supported to participate and to share their views and recommendations in the state party report. Children can prepare their own submissions to the Committee on the Rights of the Child. This can be done as their own child-led initiative, or often it's supported by NGOs, by civil society organisations or coalitions, where children are then supported by adults to submit information to the committee. It's important to bear in mind that children can share information with the committee in any way they wish. So it doesn't have to be a written report in the same way as adults. It can be anything from drawings, videos, animations, anything that they feel can represent their views and their opinions and recommendations to the committee. Children can also request a private meeting with the committee during the pre-session. So the pre-session, the time when the committee has a private meeting with civil society organisations, with UNICEF, national human rights institutions and ombudspersons. It's possible for children to attend this meeting, and it's also possible for children to have their own private meeting with the committee. It's important to mention that all of this can be done in person in Geneva and it can be done online. And more the reality is, especially at the moment during the pandemic, that we're relying on the video conferencing for these different opportunities. And then children also have the possibility to attend the country review sessions of the committee. In the same way as adults, it's not possible for civil society to speak and to present during the review session, but it's possible for children in the same way as adults to review the session and to find ways to advocate with committee members in relation to the questions that are being submitted to the government. And then a very important step of the cycle, so once the committee has submitted its concluding observations to the state party, children can be involved in activities to follow up to these concluding observations and to push for their implementation at national level with the support of adults or through their own child-led initiatives. So moving on to some preparations and things to bear in mind when we are thinking about child participation in CRC reporting. So as the top priority, it's child safeguarding. So we must ensure that in any activities that we are empowering children to participate, that their safety and a positive experience is the priority. So making sure that we take forward risk assessments in advance with children to see what kind of risks may be faced, and to put together mitigation strategies and, if needed, to adapt the activities that will be taken forward. It's important to make sure that children are aware that it's a voluntary process, to understand the full cycle and the different opportunities to participate, and also to make sure that there is a clear framework, a policy and a procedure in place, so it's clear who they need to go to if there is a concern or an incident, and as well for adults to make sure that everyone that is involved has the training and the appropriate expertise and information that's in place to know what they need to do and how they need to act to make sure that children are safe. So the next point, and it links to what I've already spoken about, is that it's really important to think about the process as a full cycle. So when we're thinking about capacity, resources, our own planning, that it really needs to be seen as a full cycle, and making sure that we bear this in mind. We really encourage and support, where possible, child-led initiatives, and really encouraging children, if and where they wish to develop their own initiatives. So for example, through their own reports, through their own videos, any way they wish to communicate and to engage with the committee. We have our child-friendly guide to CRC reporting, My Pocket Guide, and this is a really helpful tool so for children to use themselves to learn more about their rights, about the reporting cycle, and how they individually or collectively as a group can engage in CRC reporting. Importantly, in terms of preparation, in the implementation and in the follow-up, Child Rights Connect is here to offer any capacity building or technical assistance that you may need in relation to CRC reporting more generally, but specifically on child participation and child safeguarding in the cycle. In terms of timing, we would encourage to start as early as possible. This sometimes just isn't possible as much as we would like, but nevertheless, it's really important to bear in mind that when we want to have a full child participation process, ensuring that children are participating from the earliest stage possible to determine what activities are taken forward, how they wish to participate, that there's really a co-led process of the planning and what's going to happen and when it's going to happen, and for children to be part of this stage. Linking to what I've already mentioned, the capacity and the resources needed is often more than we would expect, and it's really important for child participation activities to bear this in mind and to plan for in advance. This is where it can really help to work collaboratively with other organisations, and also to build on activities, groups, initiatives with children that are already happening and that are already in place. So some methods of child participation in CRC reporting, just to give you a sense of the different methods that are being used in many different countries worldwide, to really get a sense of the situation of children's rights within a certain country. So these activities, sometimes they're led by adults, where children are then encouraged to then participate. Often they are child-led initiatives, so these activities and methods are where children are developing these methods and then consulting with their peers and with other groups across the country, and then also collecting their research and analysing and submitting it to the committee. So different methods, there's surveys, questionnaires that of course at the moment is predominantly online. We see quite often focus groups, particularly focusing on different areas of children's rights, one-to-one interviews that happen particularly on certain topics or going into more depth of certain rights. There are discussion days or consultation events. Of course, at the moment, being predominantly online, this is a little bit more difficult, but this can often happen when we're building on existing events. So for example, events happening on the International Day of the Rights of the Child, or in an event where a new strategy on child rights is being released, or when there is a National Day for Children, to really use those opportunities to link into children's rights and to CRC reporting. There's often things like national calls for evidence, or going more into depth into case studies, also kind of linking to the points I've already mentioned. Quite often literature reviews are taken forward, so what activities have already taken place to collect children's views and to empower children to learn about their rights and to share their situations in relation to their rights and their daily lives. And so as to not repeat existing or already happened consultations, and that's really important. And then I've mentioned here that quite often we see children collecting videos, photos, drawings, and this can take place through various forms, through competitions or workshops, and is a way that we see more and more that children are using kind of platforms, social media, and other ways in the digital environment to develop their own submissions to the committee. We have many examples of really great ways that children have been participating in CRC reporting. We've got a couple of key links here. The case studies included in our pocket guide, from the most up-to-date version from last year, and then also from the first edition. And it's important to highlight that even though the first edition was a few years ago, the case studies are still very relevant and interesting for us when we think about different contexts and the most appropriate and the best ways that we can empower children to participate. We've also got some more focused case studies. So for example, this case study here from Moldova, where children were supported to engage in following the session review from Moldova online. And this is just a few of many of the examples that we've collected over the years, and we would be really happy to share further examples. We have many examples of children's submissions to the committee, whether that's child-led or submissions that have been supported by civil society organisations. So there's a lot that we already can refer to and build on. So the role of Child Rights Connect. So we are here for you and for civil society and children, including children globally, to promote the empowering, the safe and the sustained child participation in UN human rights mechanisms. So we encourage where possible, as I mentioned, the child-led reports and the child-led initiatives in CRC reporting. We took forward a global study in 2019 linking to the 30th anniversary of the CRC, and we can share some more information a bit later on and share it with you via email afterwards. But it was really clear that we're still seeing very few child-led submissions to the committee, and this is something that we really want to build on and try to improve. The committee has recently developed its own child-friendly webpage, and so we think that progressively more and more there is information and awareness raising for children around CRC reporting, but as Child Rights Connect we can really help to support this and to promote this at national level. So I've mentioned already a few of our publications, and Fanny mentioned a few of these last week, but we have our mini site on CRC reporting, and the link is just here, and there's a specific page on child participation in CRC reporting with some FAQs and frequently asked questions that maybe would be helpful to review in the process and in your planning. So we're always collecting feedback, recommendations, examples, good practices, impacts of child participation in the standard reporting cycle and the simplified reporting procedure of the committee. And I know Fanny went into a bit more detail of the actual cycle and the steps last week, but you can also go to this mini site page to find out more. Just reflecting on some of the challenges and some of the barriers that are identified by children that have participated in CRC reporting. A clear one here is finding the time. The reality is that children have schoolwork, they may have other commitments with their family or with their peers, they may be taking part in other activities. It may be a situation like at the moment with the pandemic where there just isn't enough time to commit to focusing on a fairly long-term process beyond everything that's already happening in their lives. My age, so quite often we see that it's older children that are participating in CRC reporting. That's not to say that young children don't participate, but the vast majority are kind of from age 12 and up and towards more kind of 15, 16, 17. And this links closely to understanding documents. We're still developing child-friendly materials for younger children. And so there's some other challenges here. I won't go through them all, but it's the things to bear in mind and to keep on board. And I think something that is becoming more and more apparent, one of them says being able to go to Geneva. And of course, at the moment, no activities of the committee are based in Geneva. But one barrier that we can see at the moment is actually accessibility to digital tools, ways to connect online, and yeah, internet connectivity. If children don't have this, it will be very difficult at the moment for them to take part in the planning or in submitting information to the committee and taking part in the children's meeting, for example. So this kind of digital divide is something particularly apparent at the moment. Okay, I'll just skip to the next slide. So things to bear in mind, and just kind of linking back to a bit of what I've already mentioned. The accessibility of information provided, of child-friendly information, also thinking about information for children with disabilities, thinking about children with visual impairments or with hearing impairments, and making sure that as much as possible we are ensuring that that information is available and that there is accessibility to all of the steps of the reporting cycle. And safeguarding, so I've mentioned quite a few points around this, but it's really, really important that we keep this as a priority, and we can provide some more assistance or advice in this regard. Inclusivity, we see often that sometimes child participation is reserved to children that are already part of potentially groups within their schools, or already parts of groups or initiatives, or somehow linked to existing activities around children's rights. It's really important that when we take forward empowerment and child participation activities, that we think about inclusivity, and it's one of the basic requirements of the committee, thinking about children in more vulnerable situations, and making sure that we do everything that we can to make the processes inclusive of all children. A follow-up and clear planning, so linking to the last 2 points, having long-term empowering processes and making sure that children are aware and they're clear of the different steps in the cycle and when things are going to happen, what are their options and opportunities to participate, and really giving them the space to suggest their ideas and to co-create activities and to help them to lead the process. And then linking again, here is our some of our resources, just so you can also see them, and we have as well at the bottom, this is how our mini site looks, where you can find out lots more about CRC reporting and child participation, and on the right hand side you will see the tool Together with Children, and so this is a tool for civil society organizations that are empowering children to participate in CRC reporting. And we're currently updating this guide, but the version you can find online is still very relevant, and we would also be happy if you wanted to get in contact with us to get some more up-to-date information, and we would also then direct you to the mini site, which we're updating regularly based on the kind of ongoing experiences of children in the CRC reporting cycle. And then just to link back to the timeline for Turkey, Fanny presented this last week, but just to recap again, that the deadline for alternative reports from civil society to the committee will be the 1st of November this year. And then you will see the timeline for the next steps of the cycle, bearing in mind that these are tentative and it's quite difficult for us to confirm at this point because of the backlog that the committee has now has as a result of the situation of the pandemic. And here is the CRC session calendar link, so you can go to that to get further updates of the timeline, and we're of course always checking that timeline, so with any updates that we receive we can always be in touch with you to make sure everyone is aware. So I'll end the presentation here, and thanks so much for your attention. I hope it was interesting and relevant to your work, and I'd be very happy along with Fanny to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Emma, for this very informative and guiding presentation. Thank you everyone for joining us again for this webinar.